recording, and then, like, is there anything we want to say before we actually start Mystic 9?
I didn't even touch you. Why are you all of a sudden recording? 14, 15, 16.
Okay. Either way,
Buster,
either way.
I don't want to be cutting out 1,010,000 times telling you not to like me. Okay? Okay.
So I was going to say the first thing you got is to be on 3. Anyway. It was on 3. 1, 2, go. It's supposed to be 1, 2, 3. Healthcare rate. Sumi. 3 and go. Same thing. Either way, the point is, this is Mystic 9, episode 1. Is it the opening scene, or is this the names?
Mystic 9's the one that goes between the weird guitar, heavy guitar, and the, like, quieter song.
Oh, it starts with Bougier.
Well, makes sense. We're trying to tie it in. Hey, leave my yarn alone. Leave the bag alone.
Just because I put my arm down there doesn't mean I want to be late.
Yeah, I think I've seen him in something too, though.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him in Redemption. What have I seen him in?
My phone's right there. I can't check.
I know. I was gonna say this young man with full performance videos. Down below the tablet. You two hissing at each other. No, the only thing I wanted to say, not to make things confusing, but we were talking about, like, one of the categories B, skimmed over or missing details, is how this train is related to Baye. Because when this train showed up in the book, it was connected to Arye and his whole family, and it was connected to Baye's family. They completely take Baye's connection out, kind of forget about.
In many ways, this
and
show
Arye's, they
focuses a little bit
change.
too much on Arye, I feel like. Like, it's
They
supposed to be
focus on
focusing on the Mystic 9.
But at the same time, they don't focus on the Mystic 9. I feel like they...
Well, because they don't
I don't
focus on Arye as a Mystic 9. They focus on him and everything that's happening with his wife
Yeah.
instead.
And then Chen Pi isn't a Mystic 9 yet.
But it's like, in a way,
Like,
I don't remember.
Roughly halfway through,
Yeah.
he does kind of become a Mystic 9, but he isn't Mystic 9 yet. Yeah.
And then because they changed the detail of what it is they found of Arye's, I feel like that whole thing was really weird and confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, like, all of it, they just kind of skim over to just quickly bring the characters into it and continue from there. And I'm like, I feel like they didn't do it proper justice because of that. But anyway, you can continue unless you have a thought to add.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, snapshot. This is actually not a half bad snapshot for it.
And like we talk about Easter eggs from later on. That's exactly what somebody else, exactly almost the same pose as how she found it.
Not quite. I think she was on the other side of the numbers.
So I say almost.
It was at the other angle. But, yeah. New mouse.
And it's still, like I say, with the whole things that they don't do justice is the Zhang family. Because, like, during this whole scene, there was the point where they got to where Foye literally said, everybody who isn't a Zhang, scram. And everybody who wasn't a Zhang, scram. It was not just him and Rishan. There was a whole bunch of Zhang there. And he relied heavily on the Zhang.
I mean, it makes sense that there'd be a lot of other Zhangs there from their side of the family, honestly.
Well, that's what I say, because he
like,
actually left, Foye left with a bunch of other Zhangs.
Yeah,
It was not just him. And in this one, in the Mystic 9 show, they're making it sound like him and Rishan met up later. They didn't actually come here to Changsha together, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
They actually came together with a bunch of other ones. And Zhang makes Rishan, Foye makes the reference in the books that he would not have been able to get to the point he's at right now if he didn't have all the other Zhang family members with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the show, they're just like, delete! The train was a Japanese train, yes, but Baye's family member found the stuff in the tomb and wanted to get it to these guys, so he set it in motion to get it to Baye. So that they could fix the issue that was happening.
Right.
Which is confusing to me. Who is the Baye family? Because way later on, Baye himself, Baye or someone, says that they literally only have one son. So one guy gets married to a wife, has one son, that guy gets married to a wife, has one son, that guy gets married. So who's the rest of the family?
Not to mention, how do you guarantee you only have one son?
That's just how, no, it's
What
not.
about the daughters?
No, it's not that they guarantee it. It's just that's how their family goes. They literally, that's what happens. They just have one son. They all have one son. I just love how he's saying it to Jishan like he's gonna be like freaked out by this. I'm like, you're talking to Foye. Come on. You Rattle Foyer with this. Ghost train, dead people. This is Foyer you're talking about.
Which is kind of funny that he wouldn't know that, but at the same time, he's not military.
Turn the light on and look in the opposite direction. Go look in the opposite direction while I'm turning my light on. Okay. I don't remember if they properly explained later either what actually killed the guys on the train itself, do they?
That actor plays Chen Piasu in Explorer with the Nose.
Oh, he does too. I did know that actually.
He's also in Autumn Cicada. He's also in Lost Tomb 2 as Chen Pi. He's also in something else, Blue Whisper, as a guest appearance. That's as far as I've made it. Oh, he's in Destiny of Whitesnake as the White Emperor. And he's in Noble Aspirations. Am I finished? I don't know if that was your question.
No, that wasn't
Anyway,
my question.
Good enough. I'll stop looking.
Likely not. You're not done with that guy. I'm pretty sure he's been in quite a bit.
My question is, I don't remember, do they explain later what actually killed everybody on that train? Or did you have to tell me from the books?
I don't remember.
The books didn't explain what killed them either.
Oh, okay. So if they do,
I don't remember if the show
they do
explains.
explain later, it's probably something more that they came up with.
In the books, they found them on the train, I believe, like this. And then when they go to the tomb, there's actually, was it the people that were going into the tomb, or what was it? It was almost like a little village, and they found a whole bunch of bodies that were like this. And when they tried to flip them over onto their face up, they'd automatically flip back over again. It was freaking them out. They're like, what the crap? And then all that stuff. But they didn't explain what was happening with them because they didn't get far enough to explain what was happening. So if the show does, I don't remember. But the book didn't explain it.
So mean. Hope he's so happy about it, Rishan.
The arrogance of the Zhang family. I just have to keep saying it. The arrogance of the Zhang family. Sometimes it's like, ugh. Sometimes it's just hilarious.
14 minutes into it. And it's like 32. Wow.
That's what happens when you do reactions. That's one of the things that they've ever, like, when we were watching it before, I think it confused us, the timeline too. When did that Japanese guy go there? Because, like, what they were digging the mine...
They were actually talking about, like, two different incidences.
Yes, they're talking about 2 or 3 different incidents.
They're, like, combining them, which is what confused us.
But this is also one of the things that, like, every single tomb they go to in these books has multiple layers to how many people have been there and what they've done there. This all started because there was a mine that they started digging, and they accidentally found a tomb below it.
Right.
I think. But, like, the Japanese guy, was he the one that started the mine, and while they were digging the mine, they accidentally found the tomb and all kinds of stuff happened? And I think there was also possibly an incident before that, either before it or after.
Possibly, but yeah, now that we say that, yeah, I feel like they do talk about, like, 2, maybe 3 different incidences. But it takes a little while for them to actually separate the 3?
Yes.
Or the 2, or whatever.
From what I remember, we were, I think, both confused over what they were talking about.
Because
they were talking about that guy's report. But that's one thing, but there was like
the
one or 2 other events
one
as well.
Thing, but then this train is another thing. Because it's like a Japanese train, it's like they hijacked it to get here.
Even within the show, but it feels like even before that, everybody who discovers this tomb ends up collapsing it somehow so that nobody else can find it because they're like, every time they find it. So they collapse things so that nobody else can find it. And then someone else comes along and digs it up and goes like, and collapses it.
Doors.
Yeah, I know. It's so hard to get into, and yet everybody's just like,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not the Japanese guy that sent this train out, because when we first start watching it, we think the Japanese guy sent the train out. No. That was a while ago. This is something else that sent this train out.
Yeah, which they're not necessarily connecting it to Baye. So which experiments?
The papers he was holding? Well, like I say, missing details unfortunate for this. I should have read the book first if we were going to start with Mystic 9. It's been too long. But see, I feel like some of the details that they give you in this show just don't jive.
Well, that's where I'm saying, again,
this is my second time through, and I'm like, wait, what experiments?
And some of the stuff they don't follow through with until how many episodes later in the show.
I feel like some of the details they never do.
If there's a bit of a time span between watching this episode and this episode, you're like, huh? But Rishan does that how many times in this show? There's a few times where he just like, hi! And it's like, where the heck did you come from? And what they do in Sansi, where he's like the opposite of Chi-Ling.
Again, spoilers.
He's like the opposite of Chi-Ling, where he's always like, and it's like, where did you come from? Whereas Chi-Ling's always like, where'd you go?
But I was gonna say that scene on the with the gas mask right there. It's a funny little scene. Fine, leave it as it is. But like, in the book, it made perfect sense. Whereas in the show, it's like
Yeah, but
they hold it there like this, like as if that would do anything for you. That thing is supposed to be airtight so that no air can get in there. Like, what are you doing, Bae?
gas mask.
Like, Jishan's the one that's like wearing it.
No, he's not.
Well,
he's
no, he's
holding
not.
it.
He's holding it too. That like makes 0 sense to me. It's so dumb. What do you even bother?
Tattoos are not.
No,
John
those are
tattoos.
Japanese tattoos.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. Family-friendly TV was a 16-year-old.
Huh?
The first one that stuck his arm in there was a 16-year-old. There's a ton of details about this whole thing that they just don't explain. Like, it's almost like weirdly, nonsensically, just like over the top,
Pointless.
dramatic to like make you whatever. And it's like, you might as well have just taken this stuff out if you were just going to do it this weirdly.
Yeah, but at the same time,
It's one of those things where in the train he implied the Zhang family. Right there, you're like, he's disconnected from the guy. He's not acting like that guy is in any way, shape, or form possibly related to him.
In a
Except that he's a soldier.
Yes.
the slight disconnect of meeting / having this scene in here,
Mm-hmm.
but
There's a whole lot of
Not
connections
having
and
the
ties
same-
and depths that they're missing.
Yeah.
Seriously missing.
yeah. Speaking of the arm, the way they just took out that arm too, it's like it was trapped there. He's gonna no.
It was so fake. It was like
That
floppy
was-
like a mannequin.
Yeah, but it wasn't just floppy. Like I say, the way they had it cut off on the arm, it looked like they cut it off here. On his arm, they
Yeah,
definitely cut it off
way
here. And I'm like,
here.
dude, you're missing like a chunk that big. Like, what the fuck?
Seriously though, while editing this kind of stuff, I'm gonna have to like go back and read the book and see the details of this whole part. Because like there's just
Yeah,
so
but that's what I
much.
say. This is definitely one of the parts where it's just like, I get the scene. He just scared himself. Stupid soldier. They are related, but on the other hand, they're not.
Yeah. He said we have to rely on the Zhangs to do it. So that guy had to have been a Zhang to be the one sticking his arm in there because he said we have to rely on the Zhangs to do it. So why was he doing
Not
it if he
to
wasn't a
mention,
Zhang? But at the
Why
same
would
time,
you pick one that you should probably know full well is a bit of a scaredy cat?
no kidding. Good question.
It's just
If you
it's
knew
one
he was
of
going to get
those-
freaked out that badly,
It's one of those things where I'm like, okay,
should have got
it makes
Rishan to do it
sense.
then.
That's what I said. On one hand, it makes sense. On the other hand, it's just like, what?
It's a weird
What?
scene because like I mean you suppose, but it's one of those things where you almost block from your memory because it's so weird that you're like I don't know what happened there. So just move on.
Yeah, and that's where I say it's like it is definitely one of those things where you kind of need more context, but they don't give you more context. They go whoosh on by.
Yeah, and I'd say in the book that's one of the best example scenes of how the Zhang family relates to each other and functions and the kind of things they do and stuff like that.
I swear, I should be counting how many times Baya actually says "foy."
Foyer. Foyer. Foyer.
You either have to pause it or mute it if you're going to talk about that.
The ring bothers me because like it's another one of those dissonance things where it doesn't really make sense if you keep thinking about it. What is the ring doing in the coffin? How did it get in there? There was literally needles, I think, in the body's throat. There was something inside the body, so they put like needles and stuff to trap it from coming out. And of course, they'd be wearing a thimble while they're doing this needle technique.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the thimble ended up
That kind of
staying in
makes
there.
sense that the thimble might come off, and it'd be like, well, it's just a thimble. If it's just a thimble, you can use any thimble for this technique.
And while you're doing this technique and the complexity of what's going on, you can't see what you're doing inside of a coffin. It makes sense that a thimble might end up in there. Just like the other guy and his arm getting cut off. None of it makes sense.
Well, it's one of those things where
Taken out of context?
Like,
Which
if
is
you were
just
going to
slightly
change all of
odd.
that, like, just change the whole thing, okay? Just change the whole reason that it happened that way.
And that's where I say this scene is disconnected, and I still find it confusing, because I'm just like, okay, huh? Which is why I say, later on, again, spoilers,
Why is Baye so shocked that Rishon is actually connected to Foye as a family member? Are you saying that these guys are all family members, or does Baye just think that, oh, these are a bunch of Zhangs that happen to all be in the military, or just happen to all be in the same units? Like,
The only thing that we could say possibly the reason why he wouldn't know that Rishon and Jishan were connected is because the show made Rishon come later, like we say.
yeah.
So if he showed up later and joined his crew,
Maybe with that, I suppose that makes sense with Rishon, and maybe Baye knows that some of the other guys are actually related to Foye, so maybe. Already like 60 minutes,
Yes.
and we're only 27 minutes into a half-hour show.
This is why the editing is so much fun.
What? Why are you staring at me?
I do have to say too, though, Arye himself, he's not in much of the story, so there's not a whole lot to compare him to. But just from what I remember hearing about him in the stories, what you see, what you hear about, and the whole way the Jiahua is in the book, and he was like halfway raised by Arye.
Mm-hmm.
The way this guy plays Arye is like almost nothing like what I imagined him like. So either I've got a terrible imagination, or Arye himself is like he's done dirty as far as I'm concerned, and I don't know how much of it is the actor and how much of it is the script.
He kind of is, but also I think the script kind of did him dirty because he feels like a whiny. I don't know.
He is. He's like,
I mean, he doesn't even feel like someone
He's a
grieving
wimp. He
his,
feels like a
his
wimp.
wife, and he's slowly seeing her die. He doesn't even necessarily feel like that. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about him. It's
he's
just,
like wishy-washy, back and forth wimp too. Because like I say, the
Yeah.
whole way they portray him going down and looking at that map and all the rest of that stuff, it's like he's back and forth and all over the place and wishy-washy, and is not at all what I imagined Arye actually being like.
but that's what I say. Just
It's
in
almost as big of
general,
an
he
insult what they do
kinda
with
is.
Arye as what the shows do with Jiahua in general. I feel like they seriously insult him.
Like, on one hand, I would say it's this guy's acting, but on the other hand, I'm like, I've never seen him in anything else.
The only reason I would blame him, the only reason I blame the actual actor is because of the way he played Zhao Hua
That's
in
what I was gonna
Sansi.
say.
It's
except
exactly the
for
same.
Zhao Hua,
And it's
which is
terrible.
kind of exactly the same, but even in Sansi, Zhao Hua was kind of done dirty too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In Sansa, he's done extremely dirty. That's like a total fake
Yeah.
Zhao Hua. And it's the same actor. So I'm sorry, the actor does have something to do with it.
He kind of does.
It's not
Yeah.
just the script. If the same thing happened with both characters, he obviously got something to do with it.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
It's the needle part that's cool.
Where he catches the needle, yeah.
Yes.
and it's like, dude, he's not even the one that pointed a gun at you, and yet you're shooting a needle at him.
Is it a lieutenant that did something to you, and yet you're gonna go after his superior officer? Like, dude.
And that's a tiny glimpse of what he's capable
Mhm.
of.
Well, they do a few tiny glimpses of
They
what
do a
Foye
lot
is
with Arye. They
actually.
do a lot with Arye and with Foye. Both of them.
Yeah,
It's like
they're
they are
actually- like I
really,
say,
but we're not going to focus on that.
in the
they
tomb.
no.
In the tomb.
And they
the
no.
one bit of the tomb. It's like they do.
Every
show
time
what
you get
Foye
going on
could-
how
or
cool they
Arya
are, they
could be like.
flop like crazy in another area, or they wishy-washy back to the other side. And it's like,
Yep.
"Ugh."
That's just it. Later on in the tomb, it's like you totally show what Arya could be like. Kind of that's the other thing about Arya. I'm like, the more he realized that Foye wasn't going to just drop this, maybe he could have let him in a little bit more. Like, I feel like he doesn't warn Foye. He supposedly knows what's down there and some of the dangers that are down there, and yet, yeah, okay, he just warned him away from it here. But at the same time, once he's figured out that he was getting more into it, it's like, couldn't you have told him more? Aren't you supposed to be like his best friend or something? Like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
How
That's why I say
selfish,
he's very
cowardly
weirdly.
do you have to
I'm not
be?
going to get involved, but every 2 seconds he's abandoning his wife, who's supposedly the reason why he won't go, and going down to spend time staring at this map. Okay.
That's why I say he's so oddly, weirdly inconsistent with someone who's losing his wife to sickness.
Yeah, within the show, his character is very inconsistent and very. I don't like him. I really don't like Arye from Mystic 9, the show. Oh, and just like that, we're actually done the episode.
It's because these things aren't actually very long. They're surprisingly short.
Anyway, we're pausing it and starting a new one, right?
Yeah, because that's an hour and 13
Or
minutes.
stopping it.